There are some messages that arrive at exactly the right moment. You may have clicked on this message without knowing why. Maybe the title caught your attention. Maybe something about the words felt strangely personal. Or maybe you simply had a feeling that you were supposed to read this tonight. Whatever brought you here, take a slow breath and allow yourself a quiet moment, because sometimes, the message we need isn't the message we expect, and sometimes, what feels like a mysterious sign is really an invitation to look inward, to notice what your heart has been trying to tell you beneath all the noise, uncertainty, and unanswered questions. Something happened last night, not necessarily something dramatic that the whole world could see. Not necessarily a sudden event that changed everything in an obvious way. Sometimes something happens quietly. A thought becomes impossible to ignore, a memory returns, a person crosses your mind for no apparent reason, you wake up from a vivid dream, you notice a familiar name, a meaningful number, a song, a phrase, or a coincidence that makes you pause. And suddenly, you wonder, why am I feeling this way? Why can't I stop thinking about them? Why does this connection feel different? Could there really be someone out there who understands me in a way nobody else does? Perhaps that is why you are here. Perhaps your heart is searching for reassurance. Perhaps you are waiting for clarity. Perhaps you have been wondering whether the person you feel connected to is thinking about you too, and perhaps, deep down, you already know the most important part of the answer. A soulmate connection isn't necessarily about finding a perfect person who magically removes every problem from your life. It is about discovering a connection that encourages you to become more honest with yourself. It is about being seen without constantly performing. It is about feeling that someone can recognize the parts of you that you usually keep hidden. It is about learning that real connection is not built from fantasy alone. It is built from trust, from communication, from patience, from mutual effort, from choosing one another freely, again and again. And that brings us to the one condition your supposed soulmate may never have told you about. The condition isn't that you must become someone else. It isn't that you must chase them. It isn't that you must prove your worth. It isn't that you must wait endlessly for a mysterious sign. It isn't even that you must be perfect. The condition is much simpler. You must be willing to let love be real, not imagined, not forced, not controlled, real. And real love requires something that many people find surprisingly difficult. You have to allow yourself to be known. You cannot build a lasting connection while constantly hiding behind fear. You cannot experience genuine closeness while pretending you don't care. You cannot create trust while testing the other person every step of the way. You cannot ask another person to understand your heart if you never give them the opportunity to see it. That doesn't mean you should reveal everything immediately. It doesn't mean you should ignore boundaries. It doesn't mean you should trust everyone. And it certainly doesn't mean you should abandon your own judgment just because a connection feels intense. Quite the opposite. A meaningful relationship needs both openness and wisdom. It needs tenderness and boundaries. It needs emotion and reality. It needs two people who are free to choose each other rather than feeling trapped by destiny. So if you have been waiting for some enormous cosmic confirmation, Perhaps the message is not asking you to wait, perhaps it is asking you to notice. Notice what happens inside you when you think about this person. Do you feel peaceful? Do you feel respected? Do you feel encouraged to become your best self? Do you feel safe enough to communicate honestly? Do their actions match their words? Do they make room for your feelings? Do you make room for theirs? Those questions matter more than any mysterious sign, because attraction can be powerful, chemistry can be unforgettable, a coincidence can be exciting, a dream can feel incredibly meaningful, but lasting love is built in the ordinary moments. It is built in conversations, it is built in apologies, it is built in laughter, it is built in patience, it is built when two people keep showing up for one another without losing themselves in the process. Maybe something happened last night that made you think about this person. Maybe you dreamed about them. Maybe you remembered something they once said. Maybe you felt an unexpected wave of emotion. Maybe you woke up with a strange sense that something had shifted. Don't be afraid of that feeling, but don't let the feeling make decisions for you either. Let it teach you something. Ask yourself what this person represents in your heart. Maybe they represent hope. Maybe they represent a future you secretly desire. Maybe they represent the feeling of being understood. Maybe they remind you of a version of yourself that you want to rediscover. Maybe your connection with them has helped you realize what you truly value in relationships. And perhaps that is the real message. Sometimes another person enters our life and becomes a mirror. They reveal what we want. They reveal what we fear. They reveal what we have been avoiding. They reveal how deeply we can care, and they can even reveal the places where we still need to grow. That doesn't make the connection meaningless. It makes it meaningful in a different way. You may have spent a long time wondering whether your soulmate is thinking about you. But maybe an even better question is, what kind of person are you becoming while you wait for love? Are you learning to communicate? Are you becoming more confident? Are you learning to set healthy boundaries? Are you becoming comfortable with your own company? Are you learning that your worth doesn't depend on whether someone chooses you? Because here's something beautiful. You don't become worthy of love when your soulmate arrives. You are already worthy of love. A relationship should add to your life, not determine your value. And if someone truly belongs in your life, you shouldn't have to destroy yourself to keep them there. You shouldn't have to become smaller. You shouldn't have to silence your personality. You shouldn't have to abandon your dreams. You shouldn't have to constantly wonder whether you're enough. Healthy love doesn't require you to disappear. It gives you room to grow. Maybe that's why the phrase, "stay with you forever," feels so powerful. Forever sounds romantic because it promises certainty. But real life rarely gives us absolute certainty. No one can honestly promise exactly what the future will look like. What people can promise is what they choose to do today. They can choose honesty. They can choose kindness. They can choose respect. They can choose communication. They can choose loyalty. They can choose to work through difficulties rather than running from every uncomfortable conversation. And those choices, repeated over time, are what make a relationship feel lasting. So if your soulmate wants to stay with you forever, perhaps their greatest condition is not a demand, perhaps it is an invitation. Be yourself, and let me be myself too. Imagine what would happen if you stopped trying to predict every outcome. Imagine if you stopped searching for hidden meanings in every little event. Imagine if you allowed a connection to develop naturally. You could listen, you could communicate, you could notice whether the other person consistently treats you well. You could enjoy the moments you share without demanding that every moment prove something about the future. That is where genuine connection becomes possible. There may be a person somewhere who will understand you deeply. There may be someone whose personality fits yours in unexpected ways. There may be someone who makes ordinary days feel special. There may be someone who challenges you, supports you, laughs with you, and encourages you. But don't rush to label someone your soulmate simply because your emotions are intense. A soulmate isn't proven by intensity. A soulmate-like connection is revealed through consistency, through character, through mutual respect, through the ability to disagree without cruelty, through the ability to apologize, through the willingness to listen, through the feeling that both people can be themselves. And perhaps that is the secret hidden inside this message. You don't need to chase your soulmate. You need to become available to genuine connection. There is a difference. Chasing says, I need this person to choose me so I can feel complete. Being available says, I know who I am, and I am open to sharing my life with someone who treats me with care. The second is healthier. The second gives love room to breathe. The second allows two people to meet as equals. So think about last night again. What happened? What did you feel? Was there a moment that made your heart race? Was there a memory you couldn't shake? Was there a dream that stayed with you after you woke? Was there something you suddenly realized about your feelings? You don't have to dismiss it. You also don't have to turn it into a prediction. You can simply listen. Sometimes your emotions are telling you, I miss connection. Sometimes they're saying, I want to be understood. Sometimes they're saying, I'm ready to let someone closer. And sometimes they're simply saying, this person matters to me. That is already important. You don't need a supernatural explanation for every meaningful emotion. Your heart is allowed to care. Your heart is allowed to wonder. Your heart is allowed to hope. But your heart also deserves protection. So remember this, if someone is meant to be part of your life, you should not have to constantly convince them to stay. Healthy connection is mutual. You move toward each other. You listen to each other. You respect each other's boundaries. You make an effort. You communicate. You grow. And when difficulties appear, and they will, you face them with honesty instead of turning every problem into a test of whether the relationship was destined. No relationship is perfect. Even the strongest connection will have misunderstandings. There will be days when one person is tired. There will be moments when communication doesn't go perfectly. There will be differences. There will be uncertainty. The difference is what happens next. Do you talk? Do you listen? Do you repair? Do you learn? Do you treat each other with dignity? Those moments tell you much more about a relationship than a dramatic coincidence ever could. Maybe your soulmate's one condition is simply this: don't ask love to do the work that only you can do. Don't ask another person to heal every insecurity. Don't ask them to make your life meaningful. Don't ask them to guarantee that nothing will ever hurt. Instead, bring your whole self to the relationship. Bring your curiosity. Bring your kindness. Bring your humor. Bring your dreams. Bring your boundaries. Bring your willingness to learn. Bring your honesty, and let the other person do the same. That's how something lasting can begin. There is another important truth you deserve to hear. Sometimes we become attached to the idea of someone before we truly know them. We imagine their future. We imagine conversations that haven't happened. We imagine how they will treat us. We imagine what life would be like together. And the imagined version can become so beautiful that reality feels almost secondary. Be careful with that. A beautiful possibility is not the same thing as a real relationship. If you believe someone is important to you, get to know who they actually are. Notice their actions. Notice how they treat people who cannot benefit them. Notice how they respond when they are frustrated. Notice whether they respect, notice whether they celebrate your happiness rather than competing with it. Notice whether you can speak honestly around them. These things matter. A soulmate shouldn't require you to ignore reality. The right connection can survive reality. It can survive ordinary days. It can survive imperfections. It can survive honest conversations. It can survive the discovery that neither person is flawless. That is why you shouldn't be afraid to see someone clearly. If the connection is healthy, clarity won't destroy it. Clarity will strengthen it. So perhaps the thing that happened last night wasn't a prophecy. Perhaps it was a moment of awareness. Maybe you realized that you're ready for something genuine. Maybe you realized you don't want confusing relationships anymore. Maybe you realized you want someone who communicates instead of disappearing. Maybe you realized you want affection without manipulation. Maybe you realized you want someone who respects your boundaries. Maybe you realized you want a relationship where both people can laugh, learn, grow, and be themselves. That realization is powerful, because when you become clear about what you want, you become less willing to settle for something that constantly leaves you confused, and that is a beautiful kind of transformation. You start understanding that love isn't supposed to feel like an endless mystery. A little mystery can be exciting, but a healthy relationship should also contain clarity. You should know where you stand. You should be able to ask questions. You should be able to express your feelings. You should not have to decode every message. You should not have to analyze every pause. You should not have to spend every night wondering whether someone cares. If someone wants to build something meaningful with you, their actions should eventually make that clear, not because they're perfect, because they are consistent, and consistency is one of the most attractive qualities a person can have. Think about that. Not perfect words, not dramatic declarations, not impossible promises. Consistency. Someone who remembers what matters to you. Someone who listens. Someone who keeps their word. Someone who respects your time. Someone who doesn't make you feel guilty for having boundaries. Someone who wants you to have your own life. Someone who can celebrate your achievements. Someone who can say, "I was wrong." Someone who can laugh with you. Someone who can sit with you through an ordinary day. That is the kind of connection worth protecting. And if you are wondering whether someone is your soulmate, don't only ask how strongly you feel, Ask how safely you can be yourself around them. Ask whether the connection helps you grow. Ask whether you respect one another. Ask whether the relationship is balanced. Ask whether you can communicate without fear. Ask whether you both have freedom to say yes and no. Ask whether your lives become richer through knowing each other. Those questions can reveal more than any prediction. Now let's return to the title. Your soulmate wants to stay with you forever. But there's one condition they never told you about. Maybe the condition is not something frightening. Maybe it's something beautiful. Maybe they don't need you to be perfect. They need you to be honest. Maybe they don't need you to have everything figured out. They need you to communicate. Maybe they don't need you to change who you are. They need you to stop hiding who you are. Maybe they don't need you to promise forever today. They need you to show up sincerely in the present, because forever is not built in one giant moment. Forever is built from thousands of small moments, a conversation, a laugh, a shared memory, an apology, a thoughtful gesture, a difficult discussion, a moment of encouragement, a quiet afternoon, a celebration, a choice to understand instead of assume, a choice to communicate instead of disappear, a choice to respect instead of control. One moment becomes another, and another, and another. That is how people build something lasting. So don't obsess over what happened last night. Learn from what you felt. If the experience reminded you that you want love, honor that. If it reminded you that you miss someone, acknowledge that. If it reminded you that you deserve something healthier, listen to that. If it reminded you that you're afraid of getting hurt, be gentle with yourself. And if it reminded you that you're ready to open your heart, do so gradually and wisely. There is no need to rush. There is no need to force a story. There is no need to make one person responsible for your entire future. Let life unfold. Let people reveal themselves. Let relationships develop. Let trust be earned. Let affection grow naturally. And let yourself remain yourself throughout the process. You might be surprised by how much more peaceful love feels when you stop trying to control its destination. Sometimes the person you thought would be your forever person isn't. Sometimes a connection ends. Sometimes someone changes. Sometimes timing doesn't work. Sometimes two people care about each other but still aren't able to build the relationship they imagined. That doesn't mean the connection was fake. It means life is complicated, and sometimes a person can be meaningful without being permanent. That's an important truth because it allows you to love without turning every ending into a failure. Every relationship teaches something. Some teach patience. Some teach boundaries. Some teach confidence. Some teach communication. Some teach you what you never want again. And some teach you that healthy love is possible. If someone eventually becomes your lifelong partner, beautiful. But don't measure the value of a connection only by whether it lasts forever. Measure it by whether it was honest, respectful, kind, and meaningful while it existed. That perspective can change everything, and perhaps that is what your heart needs tonight. Not another prediction, not another promise, not another reason to obsess over signs, just permission to trust yourself. You are allowed to want love. You are allowed to dream about a future. You are allowed to hope that someone special is out there. But you are also allowed to take your time. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to walk away from something unhealthy. You are allowed to ask for clarity. You are allowed to have standards. You are allowed to protect your peace. And you are allowed to believe that genuine affection should not require you to abandon yourself. So if your soulmate really wants to stay with you forever, perhaps the condition is simple: stay true to yourself. Don't become someone you're not just to keep someone's attention. Don't hide your personality to seem more attractive. Don't pretend you don't have feelings. Don't ignore your boundaries because you're afraid someone might leave. Don't sacrifice every dream because you're afraid of being alone. And don't forget that you are a complete person before anyone chooses you. The right person won't need you to become less. They'll appreciate you as a whole person. They'll also challenge you respectfully when you need to grow. That's another important distinction. Healthy love doesn't mean someone agrees with everything you say. Sometimes the person who cares about you will tell you something you don't want to hear. But there is a difference between honest feedback and cruelty. There is a difference between encouraging growth and demanding that you change. There is a difference between concern and control. Learn those differences. They will protect your heart. Perhaps something happened last night that opened an emotional door. Maybe you suddenly remembered what it feels like to care deeply. Maybe you imagined a future. Maybe you realize